Hello ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? This is Force with some more Elder Scrolls Online. In today's video, I'd like to provide you guys with an overview as to building your class, the class that you should pick depending on the type of role that you want to do, what weapons you should use, what armor you should use, and how you should pick your stats, your attribute points. These are all things I'd like to cover generally here in this video, just to give you a good idea as to the things you should be looking to do when this game launches. So, I get a lot of questions, people asking, oh, what class should I build? What class should I pick if I want to be a tank or a ranger? What class should I pick if I want to be a healer? And I just want to break the mold right away. We need to get this out of the way. So there are 4 classes in the game. There's a Dragon Knight, a Nightblade, a Sorcerer, and a Templar. And when you hear those things, there's probably a notion in your mind, if you're not familiar with the game, as to what they should be. So if you hear Dragon Knight, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought of a tank, someone wearing heavy armor, maybe running around with a two-handed sword for some damage, stuff like that. Nightblade makes you think of a rogue type character, maybe an archer. A sorcerer, well, that's of course your mage wearing light armor and having a staff. And a Templar, yeah, that's a healer or a paladin, something along those lines. You need to throw all of those notions right out the window because the class does not dictate your role, not even close. You have such a wide variety of skills to choose from. The only thing that separates the classes from one another are the 3 different class skill lines. All of the classes in the game have access to all of the weapon skill lines, which give you a variety of abilities. So for example, while you can play a Templar as a healer because he does have a healing tree, the Restoring Light tree, you can play any of the other classes and simply use a Restoration Staff. And a Restoration Staff, as you can see here, will give you access to a variety of healing abilities. Now, when you build your character, you're going to keep in mind that you have two weapon slots that you can pick. You can do 2 of the same weapon or 2 different weapons, but you can have access to essentially a total of 12 skills with 5 regular skills and an ultimate on each one of these bars. So however you mix and match, you're going to have access to all sorts of different abilities. So no matter what class you pick, you can be a ranger. If you pick up the bow, you'll have access to all of these different bow attacks and these abilities that go along with that. And then you just might want to pick a class that has class abilities that you think synergize with that. So maybe more attacks at range, maybe the ability to go stealth, and you do want to play a Nightblade ranger because you can quickly go to stealth with the ability to basically vanish in the middle of combat. Or you can play as a sorcerer and get some more ranged attacks to go along with your bow attacks and get some self buffs, increased defenses and magic resistance, making you more tanky and a ranger as well. Or you can play as a Templar archer, giving you obviously some self-healing, some ranged abilities and crowd control effects in the Dawn's Wrath tree. I mean, there's just really endless combinations. Well, I guess it's not endless, but there's a huge amount of combinations, and if you have a role in mind, you shouldn't necessarily go with a default class. And let me give you a perfect example of that. Now again, if you hear Dragon Knight, this is the class that we're taking a look at right here. A lot of people would assume a tank, a heavy armor wearer. But Dragon Knights are actually one of the best casting mage type builds in this game. A Dragon Knight with a destruction staff that's focused on fire damage from the Ardent Flame tree, as well as some support abilities from the Draconic Power and Earthen Heart tree. This is one of the better and stronger PvE and PvP builds. I'm running a mid-level template of it. You can see this character is only level 42, but this is the makings of one of the stronger builds in this game. And in fact, is a build that people are saying it might be even a little overpowered. Is it in fact that strong? So even not playing as a sorcerer, I am wearing 5-piece light armor, and I am a very strong caster. I mean, that's just how it works. So don't pick your class based on the role that you think it will fill. Think about the role you want to fill, whether it be a tank, whether it be an archer, whether it be a healer, and then look for a class, look through all of the class abilities, and there's great websites out there like ESOhead.com, and if you go there, they've got a list of all the abilities. So think of a role, and then look at the class abilities of all 4 classes and try to find something that has some abilities that you think support or go well with that role that you want to pick. But, again, if you want to be a tank, even as a sorcerer tank is actually really strong because a sorcerer has some class skills that give it some great defensive capabilities. And then all you need to do is have a one-handed and shield, which has got passive abilities to increase your defensive capabilities, your blocking, as well as the ability to taunt through puncture and some charge. I mean, throw on some heavy armor, which also will make you more tanky. And there you go. You've got yourself a good tank with some self buffs, and you're going to be able to absorb damage. All of the taunts in this game, there's only 2 taunts in this game. One of them come from a one-hand and shield through puncture, and the second one is in, here we go, this is it, the inner fire from the Undaunted skill tree. This is one of the guilds which taunts nearby enemy, as you can see here. Deals magic damage and forces target to attack you. Those are the 2 taunts in this game. So Dragon Knight isn't like exclusive to having taunts. Now, a Dragon Knight does have a good tanking focused tree here in the Draconic Power, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to do that. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I hope it's clear to you now that it doesn't matter whatever role you want to pick. Don't pick the class based on what you think it should do, because you can fill those roles with any of the classes. Just pick the class based on, after looking at its abilities, how you think that's going to synergize with the type of role that you want to fill. But there are strong builds with a variety of combination. In fact, one of the stronger archers in this game is a Templar using a bow. Like that's a very strong build, a Templar with a bow. I've played a Nightblade with a bow. I liked that personally, but there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of options out there. Now, once you've picked what you want to do, then it's time to talk about what type of armor you should be using and how you should be focusing leveling up your stats. So I'm going to just make this as clear as possible here. Any abilities that use magicka to cast, they will increase in damage and effectiveness when you bump up your magicka. So when you're equipping gear, when you're finding gear, any gear that has increased magicka, or when you're speccing out your character and spending your attributes, increasing your magicka, all of that will increase the damage and effectiveness of any spell that cost magicka to cast. So that happens to be any class ability. So for all of the classes, this includes the Nightblade, this includes the classes that you think should be melee focused, all of the classes, all their class abilities use magicka to cast. And what that means is that you want to increase your magicka if you want to increase the damage and effectiveness of these abilities. Every single class, the Dragon Knight, the Nightblade, the Sorcerer, and the Templar, all 3 class lines, the abilities, the damage, the effectiveness of those skills go up by increased magicka. So when you're deciding on your build, if you decide that you want to, focus on a Dragon Knight that's focused on the Flame skill tree, if you want to increase the effectiveness and damage of these abilities, you need to bump up your magicka. That needs to be your primary focus. Now, on the flip side of that, I've got my Nightblade. My Nightblade is focused on using a bow and a 2-handed weapon. It doesn't matter what, just any 2-handed weapon these abilities are active with. Both the bow and the 2-handed weapon skill lines, these abilities cost stamina to use. So just like the abilities that cost magicka, if you want to increase the damage and the effectiveness of stamina costing abilities, you need to bump up your stamina. You need to be wearing gear that has stamina on it, and you need to be increasing your stamina as much as possible to increase the damage and effectiveness of these. So that's how you want to think about building your character. What skills do you want? What role do you want to fill? What skills do you want to use? And then when you've decided the skills that you want to be your primary damage dealers and you want to increase the most effectiveness of, that's when you decide, should I be bumping up my magicka or should I be bumping up my stamina? So here on my Dragon Knight, I've got 100% focus on magicka because all of my damage truly is coming from my magicka costing abilities. Those are my class abilities, and that actually also includes the Destruction Staff. These things cost magicka to cast, so bumping up my magicka increases their damage, increases their effectiveness. Whereas on the flip side, my Nightblade, most of my abilities are from the bow and the 2-handed weapon lines. Those cost stamina to cast, so on that character, I am focused on bumping up my stamina, because that will increase the effectiveness of those abilities. And then finally, we go into what type of armor should you be using. You can use whatever armor on whatever your build is, but there's a couple things to keep in mind. If you're focused on magicka, so if you're focused on those class skills that cost magicka, and you want to be more effective with those things, it's probably good to be using light armor, because with light armor, you get reduced magicka cost of spells. You get increased magicka regeneration. You get increased spell resistance. You get increased crit chance with spells. You also get the ability to ignore enemy resistances. Whereas with medium armor, if you've got a build focused on stamina, if you're wearing medium armor, you get increased critical strike chance. You get increased stamina regeneration, which means you're going to be able to cast those stamina abilities more often as your stamina regenerates. You get some stealth bonus. You get increased attack speed. You get increased sprint and dodge speed. So as you can see, there's an obvious synergy there. If I'm focused on my magicka, if I'm focused on those class abilities that cost magicka, light armor is the good choice. If I'm focused on stamina and those weapon abilities that cost stamina, which is anything from the two-handed, one-handed, and shield, dual-wielding, or bow skill lines, then the obvious choice would be medium armor to increase my capabilities and effectiveness with those. And then we've got the heavy armor skill line, and this is just if you want to be more tanky. No matter what your build is, no matter what you're doing, if you just want to be more tanky, so maybe we're talking about PvP situations and you don't want to die as fast, wearing heavy armor makes you more tanky. It makes you more resilient with increased armor and spell resist, increased health regeneration, increased power with melee attacks, decreased the cost of blocking, increased healing received. All of these come from the passive abilities for heavy armor. Now, what about mixing and matching? Mixing and matching is actually a strong choice. For this particular character, I am actually wearing 5 light and 2 heavy. So you will see people when they mix and match, they will go 5 of one armor type and 2 of the other. Why 5 and 2? Well, because in each one of the armor skill lines, there is this ability that's second to the bottom that requires at least 5 pieces for it to be active. So here in light armor, if you have at least 5 pieces of light, you get 10% chance to cause critical damage with spells. Here in medium, if you have at least 5 pieces of medium, you get increased attack speed by 5%. And here in heavy armor, if you have at least 5 heavy, you get decreased cost of blocking. And these scale up as you spend more points in them. I only have no points in them at the moment, so just showing the base. So this is going to be 10%. And this is going to be 20%, and the light one you can see being at 2 of 2 is at 10%. Now all of the other ones, all of the other passives just go up with every additional piece. But if you want to mix and match, so for example with my guy, yes, I am focused a lot on magicka because the most of my damage is coming from my class skills as well as my destruction staff skill line, all of which cost magicka to use, all of which increase with the magicka I gain. So magicka is my primary focus, so my primary focus in terms of armor is that light armor. But to be more tanky, I throw on 2 pieces of heavy armor, so I get some of this increased tankiness from this skill line, but I still hit that 5-piece bonus for this particular passive ability. All of the other ones, if I was wearing 7 of 7 light, sure, these would be increased as well, but I wouldn't get that benefit from this tanky line from the heavy armor. So there you go, guys. That's a little brief overview. I hope that answers your questions in terms of what you should be doing. Again, just as a quick recap, don't think about what class you want to use as an obvious, I want to be a mage, so I should be a sorcerer. That's not how you should think of it. You should think of, what role do I want to fill? Then look at all 3 class skill lines. Once again, you can do that quickly at esohead.com and see how that synergizes. And also look at all the weapon skill lines to see if there's a weapon skill line that you really like. And if you want to focus on that, anything from two-handed to bow, you're going to want a stamina build. Destruction staff and restoration staff, both these cost magicka as opposed to these ones that cost stamina. So with these 2 staffs, magicka will increase those as well, which obviously that makes sense because destruction staff and restoration staff are more, caster focused, while the other weapons are more brawler, ranger, assassin focused, if you will. Just some ideas. Let me throw out some ideas. You want to be a caster. Obviously, you could be a sorcerer. That would work. As you see here, and as I talked about, you can be a Dragonite caster as well, as like a Pyro Mage build, that works very, very well. You can be a Nightblade caster. A Nightblade caster, from the Siphoning skill line, you get damage over time, you get life gain, you get crowd control abilities like a cripple and a stun, stuff that's very, very effective. So those are some different type of sorcerer builds. If you want to be a tank, obviously you could be a Dragon Knight, you could throw on some heavy armor, and you could use the Draconic Power skill line. You could be a sorcerer, you could wear mostly light armor, and you could focus on the dark magic, the storm calling skill line. We've got some self-buff abilities, some increased armor and increased spell resistance from those skill lines as well, and that can make a good tank too. A Templar can be a good tank with self-healing from restoring light, and AoE debuffs from the Dawn's Wrath skill tree. All sorts of different potential capabilities, all sorts of different options. It really just goes down to what you want that role to be, and then pick and choose from there. So yeah, lots of different stuff, guys. Sorry I went on a little bit of a tangent there. I just wanted to make sure that I did cover everything. There's just a lot of different things that you can do in this game when it comes to the builds. And right now, I'm just tearing it up with this Dragon Knight Pyro Mage build. It's incredibly effective and strong. And that's not something that, if you were to look at this game at face value and you were to see some footage of the Dragon Knight, or just even hearing Dragon Knight, you think one thing, but it's not necessarily that way. So hopefully this answers your questions, guys. Please feel free to ask some questions in the comment section below. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the community who will be happy to answer any of those questions that you may have, and I might pop in to answer a few of them as well. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll be sure to follow this up with more guide and informational videos. Thanks again, guys. Keep watching and keep owning.